The TrekWorks YouTube channel is sponsored by HDA ModelWorks, suppliers of scale lighting products, detail accessory parts, and complete model kits. Visit HDAModelWorks.com today.
Hello there again, everybody. Boyd back with you once more. Well, I've got a pretty nice surprise for you guys today, and it surprised me as well. This is the Trumpeter 112 scale Ford GT-40 model kit. I actually ordered this kit about 6 months ago from Mega Hobby, and it's been back ordered for quite a while. I had been checking in on it, and I let that lapse a little bit, and was just thinking of it the other day. Maybe I should get on there and check on the status of that, and wound up forgetting about it, and then pleasant surprise, it was on my doorstep this afternoon. So here it is. It's a wonderful kit. It's a high parts count kit. It's super detailed in the chassis and the engine, and the body looks perfect on it. It looks exactly like a GT40 should. This is one of the best kits you can get of a Ford GT40. It's absolutely fantastic. Comes with some photo etch parts as well. Now these kits were originally produced about 6 or 7 years ago, and so this is a repop. I'm not sure if there are any differences in the kit versus the original. I have never seen an original kit or talked to anybody that's had one. Now the cover art here you see depicts the 1966 24-hour Le Mans winning car driven by Chris Amon and Bruce McLaren. If you've seen the recent movie Ford versus Ferrari, this is what this is all about. You can even see the Ferrari in the background. Ford Motor Company decided at one point to go over to Europe and challenge the ultimate king of road racing, which was Ferrari, who had been dominating all the races in Europe for years. And they basically started with a ground-up design. The original design and chassis of this car, I think, originally came from Lola. It was a British company, and Shelby took that design and improved on it, especially in the chassis strengthening area, and then, of course, the massive Ford 427 power plant. They had a lot of growing pains, with not having the right transmissions, brake failures, all kinds of things, but they worked it out to become an unbeatable world-beating supercar. As we saw in history, the GT40 went on to win several Le Mans races, and it's known as a legend today. It's absolutely one of my all-time favorite cars, right up there with the Ford Cobra. I'm crazy about anything Shelby. You guys have seen me build a couple of Shelby projects here on my channel. Did the Cobra and did a couple of Mustangs. So I'm really excited to build this one. As I said, it's got photo etch parts, highly detailed. Now the car does now come with, or actually the kit does now come with the markings to do the Ken Miles car, which was the car featured prominently in the movie Ford versus Ferrari. It's more of that Gulf livery, if you guys remember, in the early 60s or mid 60s, late 70s, or what am I saying here, 60s and 70s. Those Gulf Porsche cars, that kind of powder blue with the red, that was a really beautiful looking paint job, and it's iconic. And the GT40 was one of the first cars here to sport that paint job with Ken Miles in 1966. So as you can see here on the sidebar paneling, they actually give you the the paint scheme and the markings for the Ken Miles car. So that's the version I'm going to do. I've always loved that color, and just think that I'll go with that. There's not much else to see on the box art here, so I'm going to skip past all that. Here's another view of the car on the cover. You can see some beautiful detail. These grills here in the back are all photo etch, and just a really, really nice kit. Beautiful wheels and tires. Great detail on the engines and everything. So I'm going to do the routine here, you guys. You know the drill. I'm going to go ahead and set up the camera in a different spot so I can get you a good view, and we're going to do a out-of-the-box kit review for you today. I'm going to come back probably. I've got a lot of things going on right now with client builds, and then catching up on some other stuff I've already got started, but somewhere towards maybe the midsummer or so. That's if I can hold back long enough. I'm really anxious to build this, but somewhere around midsummer I think I'll probably start on this. I'm really really excited about it. It's an awesome kit, and it'll add to my collection. I've got the little the Cobras in 12 scale, and the Jim Clark Lotus 49 car that I built is in 12 scale, so I'll have a nice little collection of 12 scale historic race cars, and that'll be pretty cool. Alright everybody, without further ado, I'll get the camera repositioned here, get the box opened up, and we'll take a look at what's inside. Be right back. Alright, so I'm back with you guys again, and let's take a look inside the box here. Always excited to see a brand new kit I've never seen for the first time. And I've been waiting for this one and chomping at the bit, guys. I'm really excited about it. So yeah, they have a nice arrangement inside the box here. You can see it's a high parts count kit. Sprues on the left and the right are probably stacked about maybe 4 or 5 deep. So we'll dig into this thing. Right off the bat here, we have some rear suspension parts, it looks like. I can see some spindles. I can see some universal joints and axles. I see some CV joints, some other parts of the chassis. These are shock absorber parts here. I'm not going to know all these parts, guys, but I'll do the best I can. Some kind of a cross member. And these ones we can see into, I'm not going to open up out of the bags just yet. I don't want to take a chance on losing anything, but hopefully you guys are getting a good enough view of that. And I'm sure a bunch of kit reviews will come out on this thing too that'll probably give some better detail. This next one here, I'll go ahead and pop it out of the bag because we can't see it. And it looks like some plated parts. Take a look at that. All nicely wrapped in some kind of styrofoam sheet. If I can pop this out from the side without cutting that, I'd be happy. Well, I'll just give it a cut and we'll just fold it back up here. Save a little time. So yeah, a lot of parts in this kit. There are also some upgrade kits for this already, since this kit's been out for a few years already. Brass photo etch set that takes it into what we call super detailing, replaces some of the original kit parts. But just taking a look at the fine detail on some of these parts here, I'm pretty impressed. I mean, modern engineering, guys, it's just the model kits are just coming so far from what they were. Again, I really enjoy building a lot of the vintage kits, but some of this new stuff is just awesome. I'm just taking an example here. Some of this linkage here looks like carburetor linkage is just super tiny and super fine and really crisp. The chrome plating is phenomenal on this stuff. It looks excellent. I don't see any flaws in it at all. It's almost too perfect. But you can see we've got some exhaust parts here, parts of the engine block, the intake, the carburetor, good old Holley carburetor. You can see those definite Holley float bowls on that. Some chassis parts here, more like inner fender parts. Here's the timing chain cover up front, the belts with the alternator, more chassis parts, the top of the carburetor, ignition coil, super tiny pieces of linkage of some kind, and more here with clevises and all on it. Really detailed. Some hinges, some latches, and things like that. So that's really a nice sprue right there. Let's move on to the next one now. More chrome. This time we can see into it, so we'll just kind of leave it in the bag. Spare tire, which was located underneath the window at the rear part of the car in the engine compartment. Engine was in the rear on this car. Just a bunch of chrome detail parts, chassis parts here, parts of the engine. Here's one of the spinners for one of the wheels, the rear view mirror, sway bar. Looks like parts of the engine detail. So here's the rear, part of the rear grill work on the tail of the car. We've got photo etch inserts that go on that are beautiful. Hopefully we'll find those in here pretty soon. And more chrome. We have some vents. We have some beautiful 427 valve covers that look just right. They look just exactly like they should. They were slightly different on the GT-40 than the regular production 427. They were made just for those. Here's the cold air intake on top of the carburetor. Some interior engine compartment detail. More parts of the chassis and suspension. Tie rods and things like that. Here's the foot pedals for interior, accelerator, clutch, and brake. With an emergency or whatever this extra pedal is there for something, probably for racing purposes. Fuel filler cap, parts of the oil pan and oil tank. But the chrome is exquisite, I'll say that. I don't use that word very often, but it's exquisite, everyone. Here we have more chrome, which is looks like brake discs and hubs, more tire spinners. These cars had quick knockoff spinner hubs on them so they could change the tires out really fast during a race. So that's looking really good. Here's our tires. This will be the front and rear. One thing I always look at right away is how bad we're looking at a seam here. Virtually no seam mold, mold seam on the tires at all. They look beautiful, and the tread looks correct for that period of a car. Got the let's see. I don't see any raised letters on the tires at all. I'm sure that these would probably be Goodyear tires if I'm not mistaken. And I think they had an actual, like a little blue stripe painted around the edge at that time on the racing tires, but I'll check into all that. There is a blue stripe here. I can see that, but not seeing any Goodyear writing. Maybe it comes with the decals. I'm not sure. We'll dig into that too. But the tires are awesome. The rubber, real nice, very realistic. They're actually more of a dull finish too. They're not, like shiny rubber like you used to see. And these actually look like totally real tires. That's really cool. And I noticed this is some foam inserts, I believe, that go inside the tire. Makes sense to me. They're the right diameter and everything. You can punch the center out. They've been pre-cut. So that's probably to kind of like keep that shape or whatever. So that's an interesting add-on. Next we're looking at is definitely interior parts. This is the rear, you'd call that the package tray on your normal car back by the rear window there. Now it's interesting, this is a plastic white piece, but they've actually painted the aluminum part on there for you. That's kind of interesting. I'll have to be really careful when I mask all that off not to overspray on that. But yeah, that's a beautiful silver on there. And it's done perfectly. So kind of strange that they would do that on just that one part. But there it is, guys. Here's the interior of the doors, door panels, dashboard. Perfect example of a GT-40 dashboard. That's exactly what it looked like. I've become pretty familiar with these cars. I've been a big fan of them for many, many years. I've got some books about them, and can't believe I've really never built a GT-40 kit. There's a lot of nice kits out there too, from Fujimi especially. They make several variants of the car from all the different versions over the years. You had a Mark 1, Mark 2. I'm not sure what the last Mark was. Might have been 4 or 5. The car kept winning all the way until they quit making it. Here's the wheels already done in this nice gold, which looks like it's the same on either the number 2 car or the number 1 car I'm doing, so we won't even have to paint those. Maybe a little bit of wash in the hubs there to give them a little bit of detail. But that's about it. Beautiful. Really nice. That's going to look fantastic with those little spinners on there. That classic 60s look. Here are the seats, complete with the rivet detail. This thing had like metal seats, and they actually would sit on a little, the padding, but the center part here was like almost like a hammock, and it had these little rivets in there. Supposedly the driver said they were some of the most comfortable seats they ever had in a race car. You have to think about comfort when you're going to run 24 hours. So that was a big deal. That was the rivet detailed in there was to let the perspiration, and allow a little air to pass through the seat to keep the driver cool. Kind of an early example of the race teams, starting to think about stuff like that. But all that detail's on there, so it's glad to see that. I think the aftermarket photo etch set that's available for this has some, has that, and you put that on as an overlay, and it's a little bit more pronounced. And but this is there. Just have to take your time painting every one of those little silver circles on there. If I can get close enough, you guys can see that. That'll be fun. Might be able to do it with a Sharpie or something really quick. More interior detail. Looks like here's the main floor pan. The car, of course, is a right-hand drive car for racing over in Europe. So everything's over to this side. You can see the little slot where the floor pedals go, and a bunch of other stuff goes down in there. The gas tanks, fillers. There were, I believe, gas tanks down in here, or something was down in here that was pretty critical. They had to open the door to get to it. Front windshield wiper, more of the interior detail, part of the roll cage here. All this plastic is looking really crisp and perfect to me too, guys. I'm not even noticing any of the usual, maybe a little bit on this panel here, but everything is crisp and clean. Not seeing any flash or anything like that. A little swirl mark on this one, but that's the first one I've seen so far. Really great. Here's a chrome one that we already looked at, or a duplicate of that. It's got the brake rotors and all that again. Same thing. Here is part of the exterior detail, part of the body. This will be the hood, some of the scoops. This is an interesting part right here. This is called the Gurney Bulge. Kind of kind of a funny sounding name there, but Dan Gurney, if you're an American racing fan, you'll know exactly who Dan Gurney is. He's a multi-champion race car driver from the 60s, 70s. I think he was already racing all the way into the 80s or so. Won in multiple different cars, you know, Indy, NASCAR, you know, pretty much anything he drove, he was a winner. Well, Dan Gurney was something like 6'6" tall. So the GT-40 gets its name from being only 40 inches high. A lot of people may not know that. That's what the 40 stands for. So from the ground to the top of the roof, it was 40 inches. Well, that was incredibly low for back at that time. And poor old Dan Gurney had to try to fit inside that car. So wearing his helmet, his head would be stooped over when he was driving the car. So this little bulge was they just basically went back and, you know, simple engineering. They cut a hole in the roof and pop riveted on this little, they shaped this, you know, had one of their metal guys shape this little bulge right here and pop riveted it onto the roof, and Dan Gurney had instant head clearance, but he had to concentrate on keeping his head kind of in the middle of it. If he slumped over a little bit side to side, he was out of the groove, as they would say. So I think that's a really interesting racing history fact. And Dan Gurney went on one of the years later, I think with A.J. Foyt he was teamed up with, and they won the Le Mans race maybe the next year, or maybe it was either 67 or 68, I believe, with a different mark, completely brand new version of the GT-40. But so the fact that they give you that detail to put on the roof is really, really cool, and it's optional because it was only on the car that Gurney drove. So here you have the instructions. We'll check those out in just a second. Here's the engine. You can see it's got kind of a neat looking. Again, some of this stuff is pre-painted. Now this is the pan here, and the intake on the top is an interesting, almost a pewter kind of a color. If you can see that, guys, a goldish, light, you know, pewter, which is, it must be correct. That's probably the color it's supposed to be. I haven't done all that research yet, but believe me, I will when I get to that point. One of the knocks on this kit, because I did go back and read, you know, stuff about the previous release of this kit, was that the engine was lacking in detail a little bit. You know, the castings of the heads and everything are a little bit weak. They're not super defined. But once you get it all covered up, you know, I'm talking about the basic block. The transmission looks pretty good to me as far as I can tell. The basic block is supposed to be kind of, you know, a little bit bare and not exactly perfectly accurate either. But it gets covered up with a lot of cool stuff, you know, all kinds of linkage and, you know, exhaust tubing. These cars had an incredible exhaust system on, which you'll see when we build this. They were handmade, every single one of them, bent by hand, and they kind of come up straight like this and come back over the top part of the engine and go out the back of the car. And the tubes are all equal length, which was really important for building horsepower and all that. So they had to be designed to where they had to make it around all this, you know, in between chassis parts and all kinds of stuff. So I'm sure that part of the build is going to be fun. So a lot of this stuff gets covered up, you know, the basic block. So I'm not too concerned. However, again, that super detail kit, of which there are several types that are out there, there are massive upgrades for this. And I looked at a couple threads that you can find online. If you just type in GT-40 12 scale Trumpeter, you'll find a couple of build threads where one guy went just outrageously crazy and just like custom made everything on the engine, and even the, you know, I think he even modified the block and everything and got it looking like exactly what it's supposed to be like. But I'm not going to worry about that too much. I think I've seen pictures of the finished model and it's fantastic. Okay, we're getting down to the nitty-gritty here. Here's our clear parts. We've got the headlight covers here, the lower parking light or driving light covers. These look like some type of lenses for the front as well. Another one for the front. Here is the I'm not sure what that one is. That's not the rear, because it has a big rear window, but we'll see. That's for something else. Oh, I think it's a little in between the engine compartment and the driver compartment. Besides the little window in the back, I think there was a little. There's a bulkhead there, and I think this is the window for that. This clear kind of round one here, I'm not sure what that one is. It might be for one of the gauges or something. We'll figure that out. Some small little round ones there. Now here we have a bunch of cool little, I'm not going to pop this bag, but we got some hoses, we've got some screws, we've got some springs, we've got some braided line, like the old braided line before they went metal where it was nylon. That looks exactly like the real stuff, guys. That's really cool if they include that. Some rubber bumpers for something. The chassis, I'm not sure if the chassis actually is movable or, you know, functions on this car or not. It might, because it's got springs. We'll see about that. They've got the 2 decal sets. Of course, the number 1 car is the one I'm going to do, the Ken Miles car. You can see they're pretty basic. You got just the stripes along with the insignia of the 1 and a few little markings here. The red part, that little red part of detail up on the front by the headlights on the Ken Miles car, I'll just paint that and then clear over it and put all of our decals. Here's the, if you want to do the number 2, the black car, the actual winning car. Due to technicality, I still think Ken Miles won that race, but, you know, history's kind of gone over all that stuff since then. But this is the decal set for that. I believe these are sort of a grayish stripe, kind of a gunmetal gray almost, or a light silver. And these are white. But this will look great. That blue color is really sharp when you do it up. Okay, we've got the on one last sprue here of some chassis parts. This is the front. You can tell this is the front center link that connects the 2 tie rods. They've got a gear on here, so I'm going to say that this is steerable. Reminds me of the Lotus 49 Tamiya kit that I did. Looks like the front end is steerable, so the steering wheel inside the car will turn the front end. Just basic chassis parts here. Part of the hinges, the whole, you know, the front and the rear end of the car open up for display. Filler panels here, more filler panels. So let's get to the beauty of the kit, or the beauty of the car, as they would say, and look at this body. Now this, I'll confess that I cheated earlier and looked at those other parts a little early, but I haven't looked at this. I saved this as a treat. Wow, this is great. I can just see it even through the styrofoam, and it's huge for a car model. Again, we got our styrofoam here. Okay, here's the back part. Since it decided to pop out, we might as well show it. Here you go, guys. I'll get that a little closer. That iconic GT-40. Oh, they're just gorgeous cars from every angle, guys. Just checking out the mold. I see a few little imperfections, a few swirls. I see a little bit of a mold line right here, very faint. You can see that line. That'll have to all be smoothed out. Sides, I see swirling, but I don't feel any deformation. It feels nice and smooth. Don't see anything warped or anything like that. Looks really good. It's a heavy, thick plastic. You always see different types of plastic with these kits, and this one is that kind of shiny white plastic. Almost reminds me of the old school stuff. And I see a little depression right there from the injector pin molds, but again, I'm not seeing or feeling a deformation on there. It's just you can see through. It's a little thin right there. But I always sand everything. I'll sand all this down with 600 and get it all cleaned up, and when I prime it, I'll put a guide coat of black primer on and block sand it again, and that'll show any imperfections in it. Because when you build a big model like this, you've got to take your time and actually do real body work on them sometimes to get, if you're really going to be picky, which I obviously am on this one. Okay, let's get the front end out. And got a little rubber bumper that held it in place there. This is great. Yeah, this is looking nice. Again, about the same thing I saw on the other part there. Just a faint mold line. Not seeing any imperfections in the surface at all. Another mold line that comes right through here and wraps around and goes over there. Not sure if that camera will show it to you or not. But very good, and definitely sturdy. That's really good. All right, get this one out of the way here. Get to the center part of the car. Okay, I see a floor pan in here too. And we got some other stuff going on. Let's see what we got right here. Okay, some clear parts of some kind. It's the side windows, I believe, for the body, for the doors. I was wondering why I hadn't seen any windshield or rear glass yet. Must be in here, hopefully. Okay, so here's the main body tub, which is interesting because the way they did this is pretty much how the real car was. I've seen pictures of these during assembly, and this is basically the what they start with building a GT-40. It's this, you know, part of the bodywork and part of the chassis. And this obviously is the front. You can just see, look how sloped back that windshield is. These things are just laid back totally flat. Beautiful design. Little interior pressure relief vents there to let air come out of the back of the car. There was a lot of really innovative things about this design. Okay, here's one of the doors. They are not gull wing. They kind of look like they might be a gull wing, but they're not. They opened up normally. So there's that. Here's the, yeah, I'm not going to take this out of the bag, but here's our front windshield and our rear glass. They've got that all wrapped up. So we're not missing that, thank goodness. And the taillights, done in your typical clear red. So you could light this car if you want to. I'm not going to bother with that, but 24 Hours of Le Mans, they did race them at night, so they had to have lights and also a windshield wiper. If it rained, they did not stop racing. These guys really were almost madmen back at that time, the way they raced. They'd race in almost any conditions and almost at the same speed they raced in dry weather. And the race went on. Here's more of that. We have the white plastic again for the floor pan, but here's more of that silver again, which I just think is really interesting. Now, I've never seen that like that before, where they've painted part of it for you already. It's definitely not two separate pieces. You can see a faint little bit of, just the faintest little bit of overspray right there. So it's painted on there, but that's interesting. They must have wanted to be sure you got the right color, because it wouldn't have been too hard to paint it on your own. It's just a flat piece, but okay. Looks like all we're down to is just one door that's left. Get you a little bit closer look at that. Same thing I'm feeling on the rest of the kit. Thick plastic. You know, they look to be pretty good. Not seeing any kind of flash. So, all in all, I'm very pleased. And I'm sure somewhere inside here, let me see if I can track it down, guys. I haven't seen it yet. Okay, here it is. Okay, there's your photo etch, or at least some of it. Look at these beautiful screens for the back. And something on the interior of the engine compartment too, but that's going to add some beautiful detail onto the model. You definitely can't make that out of plastic and have it, you know, open like that. They could have, if it was plastic, you'd see a flat piece with that stuff on the top. You'd have to do a wash on it to make it look like it was open. There's more photo etch in there too. Oh, and here's the Goodyear. Yep, there's the Goodyear for the tires. Looks like an interesting, might be a dry rub type decal. We'll have to see. It doesn't look like a regular water slide decal to me. But I'm not going to open this right now, guys. You'll see all this again when I build this kit. There's some bare metal foil in here, kind of pre-cut stuff that you stick on something. So they just pulled out all the stops on this. This is just beautiful. And right out of the box, it'll be a beautiful build. You know, don't convince yourself that you always have to have, you know, the mega stuff. I know I say that while I bought the stuff for the Titanic, the 200 Titanic, but you know, that model to me is going to be kind of a once-in-a-lifetime build, and it may take me a couple years to finish it. I'll do a little bit at a time. Don't worry, you guys won't miss it, but if it does, it does. So, but I wanted to go all out on that. That's just, you know, I've always said that since I started modeling, that that's kind of one of my, I've got a lot of Grail kits, but that was one of my Grail builds, is to build some kind of a really big Titanic. But this kit's awesome. Again, Trumpeter, just the same as the Titanic kit. They are stepping up their game here, guys. I'm really impressed with their stuff, and can't wait to build this. So I'm going to go ahead and pack it all back up off camera. I hope you guys enjoyed this review. I will let you guys know ahead of time during one of my other builds when I'm going to start on this. Like I said, I'm shooting for sometime around midsummer, maybe August, something like that, maybe late August. And we'll get started on it. Don't know how long it'll take, but we'll just take our time and do it. Oh, one more thing. Let's just page through the instructions real quick. There's your parts count. Really nice instruction sheet. Beautiful color picture here of the winning car from '66. There are tons of videos about this on YouTube, documentaries about the race and everything that happened. Yeah, here you're putting together the really complex exhaust system, if you can see that depicted right here. It's a beautiful sight to behold on its own. It's one of the iconic things about these cars. There's one more race car that I would love to see done in 1/12 scale that, you know, I would definitely want, and that's the Shelby Daytona Coupe. You know, that was that car was around and racing at the same time as these were. Again, those were all hand built and everything, and one of a kind. And they won almost every race they entered in, and they became dominant. One of those in 12 scale. I know there's some smaller scale kits out there and some die cast, but hopefully one day maybe we'll see a 1/12 scale. Just your usual thing, guys, going through, putting everything together. Nice, clear, concise, black and white, easy to see. Instructions here in English and Japanese. I believe, well, at least the part numbers, or the color callouts, I think, are in Japanese. But the actual description of what you're actually doing, where it says glue this or do not cement, it's all in English. Here's some detail of the seats going together. You got some seat harnesses, which is great. Roll cage detail, battery, some interior cockpit detail. Okay, the interior tub dropping down onto the chassis. And just your usual thing, the air box, cold air intake box going together. Radiator was in the front. The doors going on. Hinges. The doors do open and close on this kit. Kind of just skipping over a few things here. But yeah, just tons of stuff, guys. Tons of little detail parts. But I've even been impressed with the instruction sheet. Okay, here's your color callouts in the back. Decal placement. This is a great looking car, don't get me wrong. I love the, and this is the actual winning car. I love the look of it, but there's just something about that original Gulf, like I said, and those are famous colors that you see there. They were always popular. I can see why. It's just really sharp, and it looks really sharp on the racetrack. So that's how we're going to do it up. I guess we'll call it a tribute to Ken Miles. I've read a few books about him. He's not known very well, but he did a lot of things back in the day. Okay, that's a wrap, everybody. We'll be back again in a couple days. I'm finishing up the, or at least taking the next big step on the Cylon Base Star. So I'll give you an update on that maybe by Saturday or so. I'm getting very close to bringing back the live shows too. My camera, I got a couple new cameras. Now I'm working in the software, a couple cables that I still need. So maybe another 2 weeks or so, I'll be shooting to do another live Saturday night show. Hope you guys will come back and check that out. Just decided to kind of take it easy on that for a little bit because the cameras I had were not working right, and it turns out I had a bad USB hub, which was acting intermittent and cutting off my cameras once in a while, screwing everything up. So it was kind of frustrating. So I just decided I don't want to keep. I think I was like 30 minutes into the last broadcast and it just quit on me. So that was pretty frustrating. But I love doing them, and so we'll get it all set back up, and we'll have a better show when we come back because the cameras are going to be much better. I'm not going to use web cameras anymore. I'm using regular, like a GoPro and a regular Canon mini camera. So you're going to get really nice pictures. That way I can focus a lot better. Webcams are just fine for face-to-face stuff and all that, but for up-close modeling, detailing, and stuff like that, they just aren't good enough. They don't have any kind of stabilization, so if you barely move them, it's like you're having an earthquake. So anyways, guys, enough rambling on. We'll come back here in a couple days with the Cylon Base Star. See you then, everybody. Take care and happy modeling.